During the years that I was writing the Dancing Wooly Masters, and after, I was drawn again and again to the writings of William James, Carl Jung, Benjamin Lee Horth, Niels Bohr, and Albert Einstein. I returned to them repeatedly. I found in them something special. Although it was not until later that I was able to understand that specialness, these fellow humans reached for something greater than they were able to express directly through their work. They saw more than they could express in the language of psychology or linguistics or physics, and they sought to share what they saw. It is what they, or physics, sought to share through the medium of their work that drew me to them. They were mystics. That is my word. They would not use such language, but they knew it. They feared that their careers might become contaminated by association with those who did not work within the scientific model. But in the depths of their own thoughts, they each saw much too much to be limited by the five senses, and they were not. Their works contribute not only to the evolution of psychology, linguistics, and physics, but also to the evolution of those who read them. They have the capability to change those who touch them in ways that also cannot be expressed directly in the terms of psychology, or linguistics, or physics. As I came to understand, in retrospect, the magnetic quality that these works held for me, I came to understand that what motivated these men was not earthly prizes or the respect of colleagues, but that they put their souls and minds on something and reached the extraordinary place where the mind could no longer produce data of the type that they wanted, and they were in the territory of inspiration where their intuitions accelerated, and they knew that there was something more than the realm of time and space and matter, something more than physical life. They knew it. They could not necessarily articulate this clearly, because they were not equipped to talk about such things, but they felt it, and their writings reflected it. In other words, I came to understand that what motivated these men, and many others, was in fact something of great vision that comes from beyond the personality. Each of us is now being drawn, in one way or another, to that same great vision. It is more than a vision. It is an emerging force. It is the next step in our evolutionary journey. Humanity, the human species, is longing now to touch that force, to shed that which interferes with clear contact. Much of the difficulty in doing this lies in the fact that the vocabulary with which to address this new force, which is indeed the eternal force, is not yet born. In this moment, and in this hour of human evolution, this proper vocabulary and means of addressing that which longs to transcend religiosity and spirituality and assume the position of authentic power is longing to be born. We need to give that which we as a species are now touching consciously, for the first time, a vocabulary that is not clouded so that it can be identified clearly in the acts and judgments of the human race, so that it can be seen clearly, and not through veils of mystery or mysticism, but simply as the authentic power that moves the force fields of this earth of ours. I hope that this book will assist, as a way of talking about what we are and what we are becoming. I have used the terms five-sensory and multisensory. Multisensory is not better than five-sensory. It is simply more appropriate now. As one system of human experience winds down and another more advanced system emerges, the older system may appear by comparison to be lacking. But from the perspective of the universe, the language of comparison is not the language of lesser and better, but of limitation and opportunity. The experiences of the multisensory human are less limited, provide more opportunities for growth and development, and more opportunities to avoid unnecessary difficulties. I have contrasted the experiences of the five-sensory human with the experiences of the multisensory human in each instance, to make their differences as clear as possible. But this does not mean that the five-sensory phase of our evolution, the phase from which we are emerging, is negative in comparison to the phase of our evolution that we are entering, the multisensory phase. It is simply that it is now no longer appropriate, just as there came a time when the use of candles became inappropriate because of electricity, but the advent of electricity did not make candle power negative. Who among us is an expert on the human experience? We have only the gift of sharing perceptions that hopefully can help those on their journey. There is no such thing as an expert on the human experience. The human experience is an experience in movement and thought and form, and, in some cases, an experiment in movement and thought and form. The most that we can do is comment on the movement, the thought and the form, but those comments are of great value if they can help people to learn to move gracefully, to think clearly, to form like artists the matter of their lives. We are in a time of deep change. We will move through this change more easily if we are able to see the road upon which we are traveling, our destination, and what it is that is in motion. I offer what is in this book as a window through which I have come to see life. I offer this window to you, but I do not say that it is necessary that you accept it. There are so many ways to wisdom and to the heart. This is our greatest richness, and the one that gives me the most joy. We have much to do together. Let us do it in wisdom and love and joy. Let us make this the human experience. Chapter 1. Evolution. The evolution that we learned about in school is the evolution of physical form. We learned, for example, that the single-celled creatures of the oceans are the predecessors of all more complex forms of life. A fish is more complex, and, therefore, more evolved than a sponge. A horse is more complex, and, therefore, more evolved than a snake. A monkey is more complex, and, therefore, more evolved than a horse, and so on, up to human beings, which are the most complex, and, therefore, the most evolved life forms upon our planet. We were taught, in other words, that evolution means the progressive development of organizational complexity. This definition is an expression of the idea that the organism that is best able to control both its environment and all of the other organisms in its environment is the most evolved. Survival of the fittest means that the most evolved organism in a given environment is the organism that is at the top of the food chain in that environment. According to this definition, therefore, the organism that is most able to ensure its own survival, most able to serve its self-preservation, is the most evolved. We have long known that this definition of evolution is inadequate, but we have not known why. When two humans engage one another, they are, in terms of organizational complexity, equally evolved. If both have the same intelligence, yet one is small-minded, mean and selfish, while the other is magnanimous and altruistic, we say that the one who is magnanimous and altruistic is the more evolved. If one human intentionally sacrifices his or her life to save another, by, for example, using his or her own body to shield another from an unseen bullet or a speeding car, we say that the human who sacrificed his or her life, indeed, was one of the most evolved among us. We know these things to be true, but they are at variance with our understanding of evolution. Jesus, we are told, foresaw the plot against his life, even to the details of how his friends would act and react, yet he did not run from what he saw. The entirety of humankind has been inexorably shaped by the power and love of one who gave his life for others. All who revere him, and almost all who but know his story, agree that he was one of the most evolved of our species. Our deeper understanding tells us that a truly evolved being is one that values others more than it values itself, and that values love more than it values the physical world and what is in it. We must now bring our understanding of evolution into alignment with this deeper understanding. It is important that we do this because our current understanding of evolution reflects the phase of evolution that we are now leaving. By examining this understanding, we can perceive how we have evolved to now, and what we are now in the process of leaving behind. By reflecting upon a new and expanded understanding of evolution, one that validates our deepest truths, we can see what we are evolving into, and what that means in terms of what we experience, what we value, and how we act. Our current understanding of evolution results from the fact that we have evolved until now by exploring physical reality with our five senses. We have been, until now, five-sensory human beings. This path of evolution has allowed us to see the basic principles of the universe in concrete ways. We see through our five senses that every action is a cause that has an effect, and that every effect has a cause. We see the results of our intentions. We see that rage kills. It takes away breath, the life force, and it sills blood, the carrier of vitality. We see that kindness nurtures. We see and feel the effects of a snarl and a smile. We experience our ability to process knowledge. We see, for example, that a stick is a tool, and we see the between siblings and between races, between classes and between sexes. It disrupts the natural tendency toward harmony between nations and between friends. The same energy that sent warships to the Persian Gulf sent soldiers to Vietnam and crusaders to Palestine. The energy that separated the family of Romeo from the family of Juliet is the same energy that separates the racial family of the black husband from the racial family of the white wife. The energy that set Lee Harvey Oswald against John Kennedy is the same energy that set Cain against Abel. Brothers and sisters quarrel for the same reason that corporations quarrel. They seek power over one another. The power to control the environment, and those within it, is power over what can be felt, smelled, tasted, heard, or seen. This type of power is external power. External power can be acquired or lost, as in the stock market or an election. It can be bought or stolen, transferred or inherited. It is thought of as something that can be gotten from someone else or somewhere else. One person's gain of external power is perceived as another person's loss. The result of seeing power as external is violence and destruction. All of our institution, social, economic, and political reflect our understanding of power as external. Families, like cultures, are patriarchal or matriarchal. One person wears the pants. Children learn this early, and it shapes their lives. Police departments, like the military, are produced by the perception of power as external. Badge, boots, rank, radio, uniform, weapons, and armor are symbols of fear. Those who wear them are fearful. They fear to engage the world without defenses. Those who encounter these effects of how we choose to use it. The club that kills can drive a stake into the ground to hold a shelter. The spear that takes a life can be used as a lever to ease life's burdens. The knife that cuts flesh can be used to cut cloth. The hands that build bombs can be used to build schools. The minds that coordinate the activities of violence can coordinate the activities of cooperation. We see that when the activities of life are infused with reverence, they come alive with meaning and purpose. We see that when reverence is lacking from life's activities, the result is cruelty, violence, and loneliness. The physical arena is a magnificent learning environment. It is a school within which, through experimentation, we come to understand what causes us to expand and what causes us to contract, what causes us to grow and what causes us to shrivel, what nourishes our souls and what depletes them, what works and what does not. When the physical environment is seen only from the five-sensory point of view, physical survival appears to be the fundamental criterion of evolution, because no other kind of evolution is detectable. It is from this point of view that survival of the fittest appears to be synonymous with evolution, and physical dominance appears to characterize advanced evolution. When perception of the physical world is limited to the five-sensory modality, the basis of life in the physical arena becomes fear. Power to control the environment and those within the environment appears to be essential. The need for physical dominance produces a type of competition that affects every aspect of our lives. It affects relationships between lovers and between superpowers. Symbols are fearful. They fear the power that these symbols represent, or they fear those whom they expect this power to contain, or they fear both. The police and the military, like patriarchal and matriarchal families and cultures, are not origins of the perception of power as external. They are reflections of the way that we, as a species and as individuals, have come to view power. The perception of power as external has shaped our economics. The ability to control economies within communities and within nations, and the ability to control the transnational economy of the world is concentrated in the hands of a few people. To protect workers from these people, we have created unions. To protect consumers, we have created bureaucracies in government. To protect the poor, we have created welfare systems. This is a perfect reflection of how we have come to perceive power as the possession of a few while the majority serves it as victims. Money is a symbol of external power. Those who have the most money have the most ability to control their environment and those within it, while those who have the least money have the least ability to control their environment and those within it. Money is acquired, lost, stolen, inherited, and fought for. Education, social status, fame, and things that are owned, if we derive a sense of increased security from them, are symbols of external power. Anything we fear to lose: a home, a car, an attractive body, and an agile mind, a deep belief, is a symbol of external power. What we fear is an increase in our vulnerability. This results from seeing power as external. When power is seen as external, the hierarchies of our social, economic, and political structures, as well as the hierarchies of the universe, appear as indicators of who has power and who does not. Those at the top appear to have the most power and, therefore, to be the most valuable and the least vulnerable. Those at the bottom appear to be the least powerful and, therefore, to be the least valuable and the most vulnerable. From this perception, the general is more valuable than the private. The executive is more valuable than the chauffeur. The doctor is more valuable than the receptionist. The parent is more valuable than the child, and the divine is more valuable than the worshipper. We fear to transgress our parents, our bosses, and our God. All perceptions of lesser and greater personal value result from the perception of power as external. Competition for external power lies at the heart of all violence. The secondary game behind ideological conflicts, such as capitalism versus communism, and religious conflicts, such as Irish Catholic versus Irish Protestant, and geographical conflicts, such as Jew versus Arab, and familial and marital conflicts, is external power. The perception of power as external splinters the psyche, whether it is the psyche of the individual, the community, the nation, or the world. There is no difference between acute schizophrenia and a world at war. There is no difference between the agony of a splintered soul and the agony of a splintered nation. When a husband and a wife compete for power, they engage the same dynamic that humans of one race do when they fear humans of another race. From these dynamics, we have formed our present understanding of evolution as a process of ever-increasing ability to dominate the environment and each other. This definition reflects the limitations of perceiving the physical world with only 5 senses. It reflects the competition for external power that is generated by fear. After millennia of brutality to one another, individual to individual and group to group, it is now clear that the insecurity which underlies the perception of power as external cannot be healed by the accumulation of external power. It is evident for all to see, not only with each newscast and evening paper, but also through each of our countless sufferings as individuals and as a species, that the perception of power as external brings only pain, violence, and destruction. This is how we have evolved until now, and this is what we are leaving behind. Our deeper understanding leads us to another kind of power, a power that loves life in every form that it appears, a power that does not judge what it encounters, a power that perceives meaningfulness and purpose in the smallest details upon the earth. This is authentic power. When we align our thoughts, emotions, and actions with the highest part of ourselves, we are filled with enthusiasm, purpose, and meaning. Life is rich and full. We have no thoughts of bitterness. We have no memory of fear. We are joyously and intimately engaged with our world. This is the experience of authentic power. Authentic power has its roots in the deepest source of our being. Authentic power cannot be bought, inherited, or hoarded. An authentically empowered person is incapable of making anyone or anything a victim. An authentically empowered person is one who is so strong, so empowered, that the idea of using force against another is not too tart of HL or her consciousness. No understanding of evolution is adequate that does not have at its core that we are on a journey toward authentic power, and that authentic empowerment is the goal of our evolutionary process and the purpose of our being. We are evolving from a species that pursues external power into a species that pursues authentic power. We are leaving behind exploration of the physical world as our sole means of evolution. This means of evolution, and the consciousness that results from an awareness that is limited to the 5-sensory modality, are no longer adequate to what we must become. We are evolving from 5-sensory humans into multisensory humans. Our 5 senses, together, form a single sensory system that is designed to perceive physical reality. The perceptions of a multisensory human extend beyond physical reality to the larger dynamical systems of which our physical reality is a part. The multisensory human is able to perceive and to appreciate the role that our physical reality plays in a larger picture of evolution and the dynamics by which our physical reality is created and sustained. This realm is invisible to the five-sensory human. It is in this invisible realm that the origins of our deepest values are found. From the perspective of this invisible realm, the motivations of those who consciously sacrifice their lives for higher purposes make sense. The power of Gandhi is explicable, and the compassionate acts of the Christ are comprehensible in a fullness that is not accessible to the five-sensory human. All of our great teachers have been, or are, multisensory humans. They have spoken to us and acted in accordance with perceptions and values that reflect the larger perspective of the multisensory being, and, therefore, their words and actions awaken within us the recognition of truths. From the perception of the five-sensory human, we are alone in a universe that is physical. From the perception of the multisensory human, we are never alone, and the universe is alive, conscious, intelligent, and compassionate. From the perception of the five-sensory human, the physical world is an unaccountable given in which we unaccountably find ourselves, and we strive to dominate it so that we can survive. From the perception of the multisensory human, the physical world is a learning environment that is created jointly by the souls that share it, and everything that occurs within it serves their learning. From the perception of the five-sensory human, intentions have no effects. The effects of actions are physical, and not all actions affect us or others. From the perception of the multisensory human, the intention behind an action determines its effects. Every intention affects both us and others, and the effects of intentions extend far beyond the physical world. What does it mean to say that an invisible realm exists in which the origins of our deeper understandings are located? What are the implications of considering the existence of a realm that is not detectable through the five senses, but that can be known, explored, and understood by other human faculties? When a question is asked that cannot be answered within the common frame of reference, it can be classified as nonsensical, or it can be dismissed as a question that is not appropriate, or the person who is asking the question can expand his or her consciousness to encompass a frame of reference from which the question can be answered. The first two options are the easy ways out of a confrontation with a question that appears to be nonsensical or inappropriate. But the seeker, the true scientist, will allow himself or herself to expand into a frame of reference from which the answers that he or she is seeking can be understood. We, as a species, have been asking the questions: is there a God? Is there a divine intelligence? And, is there a purpose to life? For as long as we have been able to articulate questions, the time has now come for us to expand into a frame of reference that allows these questions to be answered. The larger frame of reference of the multisensory human allows an understanding of the experientially meaningful distinction between the personality and the soul. Your personality is that part of you that was born into, lives within, and will die within time. To be a human and to have a personality is the same thing. Your personality, like your body, is the vehicle of your evolution. The decisions that you make and the actions that you take upon the earth are the means by which you evolve. At each moment you choose the intentions that will shape your experiences and those things upon which you will focus your attention. These choices affect your evolutionary process. This is so for each person. If you choose unconsciously, you evolve unconsciously. If you choose consciously, you evolve consciously. The fearful and violent emotions that have come to characterize human existence can be experienced only by the personality. Only the personality can feel anger, fear, hatred, vengeance, sorrow, shame, regret, indifference, frustration, cynicism, and loneliness. Only the personality can judge, manipulate, and exploit. Only the personality can pursue external power. The personality can also be loving, compassionate, and wise in its relations with others, but love, compassion, and wisdom do not come from the personality. They are experiences of the soul. Your soul is that part of you that is immortal. Every person has a soul, but a personality that is limited in its perception to the five senses is not aware of its soul and, therefore, cannot recognize the influences of its soul. As a personality becomes multisensory, its intuitions, its hunches, and subtle feelings become important to it. It senses things about itself, other people, and the situations in which it finds itself that it cannot justify on the basis of the information that its five senses can provide. It comes to recognize intentions, and to respond to them, rather than to the actions and the words that it encounters. It can recognize, for example, a warm heart beneath a harsh and angry manner, and a cold heart beneath polished and pleasing words. When a multisensory personality looks inside itself, it finds a multitude of different currents. Through experience, it learns to distinguish between these currents and to identify the emotional, psychological, and physical effects of each. It learns, for example, which currents produce anger, divisive thoughts, and destructive actions, and which currents produce love, healing thoughts, and constructive actions. In time, it learns to value and to identify with those currents that generate creativity, healing, and love, and to challenge and release those currents that create negativity, disharmony, and violence. In this way, a personality comes to experience the energy of its soul. Your soul is not a passive or a theoretical entity that occupies a space in the vicinity of your chest cavity. It is a positive, purposeful force at the core of your being. It is that part of you that understands the impersonal nature of the energy dynamics in which you are involved, that loves without restriction and accepts without judgment. If you desire to know your soul, the first step is to recognize that you have a soul. The next step is to allow yourself to consider, if I have a soul, what is my soul? What does my soul want? What is the relationship between my soul and me? How does my soul affect my life? When the energy of the soul is recognized, acknowledged, and valued, it begins to infuse the life of the personality. When the personality comes fully to serve the energy of its soul, that is authentic empowerment. This is the goal of the evolutionary process in which we are involved, and the reason for our being. Every experience that you have and will have upon the earth encourages the alignment of your personality with your soul. Every circumstance and situation gives you the opportunity to choose this path, to allow your soul to shine through you, to bring into the physical world through you its unending and unfathomable reverence for and love of life. This is a book about authentic empowerment, the alignment of the personality with the soul, what that involves, how it happens, and what it creates. To understand these things requires an understanding of things that appear unusual to the five-sensory human, but they become natural once you understand evolution. That five-sensory perception is a journey leading to multisensory perception, and that you are not always meant to be five-sensory. Chapter 2. Karma. Most of us are accustomed to the belief that our participation in the process of evolution is limited to the duration of a single lifetime. This belief reflects the perspective of the five-sensory personality. From the point of view of the five-sensory personality, nothing of itself lasts beyond its lifetime. and there is nothing in the experience of the five-sensory human that is not of itself. The multisensory human, too, understands that nothing of itself lasts beyond its lifetime, but is also aware of its immortal soul. The lifetime of your personality is one of a myriad of experiences of your soul. The soul exists outside of time. The perspective of the soul is immense, and the perception of the soul is without the limitations of the personality. Souls that have chosen the physical experience of life as we know it as a path of evolution have, in general, incarnated their energies many times into many psychological and physical forms. For each incarnation, the soul creates a different personality and body. The personality and the body that, for the five-sensory human, are the experiential entirety of its existence, are, for its soul, the unique and perfectly suited instruments of a particular incarnation. Each personality contributes, in its own special way, with its own special aptitudes and lessons to learn, consciously or unconsciously, to the evolution of its soul. The life of a mother, a warrior, a daughter, a priest. The experiences of love, vulnerability, fear, loss, and tenderness. The struggles with anger, defiance, emptiness, and jealousy all serve the evolution of the soul. Each physical, emotional, and psychological characteristic that comprises a personality and its body, strong or weak arms, dense or penetrating intellect, happy or despairing disposition, yellow or black skin, even hair and eye colors, perfectly suited to its soul's purpose. The five-sensory personality is not aware of the many other incarnations of its soul. A multisensory personality may be conscious of these incarnations, or experience them as its own past or future lives. They are in its family of lives, so to speak, but they are not lives that it, itself, has lived. They are experiences of its soul. From the point of view of the soul, all of its incarnations are simultaneous. All of its personalities exist at once. Therefore, the release of negativity that occurs in one of the soul's incarnations benefits not only itself, but all of its soul's other incarnations also. Because the soul, itself, is not confined to time, the past of a personality, as well as its future, is enhanced when a personality releases currents of fear and doubt. As we shall see, the release of negativity by a personality benefits a great many other dynamics of consciousness as well. Some of these can be perceived by the five-sensory human but appear to him or her neither as dynamics of consciousness, nor as related to his or her inner processes, such as the consciousness and evolution of his or her sex, race, nation, and culture. Others extend far beyond the perceptual ability of the five-sensory human. A conscious lifetime, therefore, is a treasure beyond value. The personality and its body are artificial aspects of the soul. When they have served their functions, at the end of the soul's incarnation, the soul releases them. They come to an end, but the soul does not. After an incarnation, the soul returns to its immortal and timeless state. It returns once again to its natural state of compassion, clarity, and boundless love. This is the context in which our evolution occurs. The continual incarnation and reincarnation of the energy of the soul into the physical arena, into our earth school. Why does this happen? Why is it necessary even to speak of personalities and souls? The incarnation of a soul is a massive reduction of the power of the soul to a scale that is appropriate to a physical form. It is a reduction of an immortal life system into the framework of time and the span of a few years. It is the reduction of a perceptual system that partakes simultaneously, through direct experience, of countless lifetimes, some of them physical and some of them non-physical, to the 5 physical senses. The soul chooses, voluntarily, to undertake this experience in order to heal. The personality is those parts of the soul that require healing, along with those parts of the soul, such as compassion and love, that the soul has lent to the process of healing in that lifetime. The splintered aspects of the soul, the aspects that require healing, need to interact in physical matter so that each part of the splinteredness can become whole. The personality is like a complex mandala that is formed from these splintered parts in addition to the parts that are not splintered. It comes directly from the parts of the soul that the soul has chosen to work on in this lifetime to heal, that need to experience physical matter, and those parts that the soul has given to the process of healing in which you are involved. Therefore, you can see within a person's personality the splintered suffering of the soul from which it was formed, as well as the grace that the soul has earned, which is the loving part of the personality. Consider how powerful the soul is if it can have a part of itself that experiences great love, a part of itself that experiences fears, a part that is perhaps neutral, a part that experiences schizophrenia, and a part that is dramatically compassionate. If any of these parts are incomplete, the personality that the soul forms will be out of harmony. The harmonious personality is one in which the soul flows easily through the part of itself that is in touch with its physical incarnation. The soul has no beginning and no end, but flows toward wholeness. The personality emerges as a natural force from the soul. It is an energy tool that the soul adapts to function within the physical world. Each personality is unique, because the configuration of energy of the soul that formed it is unique. It is he persona of the soul, so to speak, that interacts with physical matter. It is a product that is formed from the vibrational aspect of your name, the vibrational aspect of your relationship to planets at the time of your incarnation, and vibrational aspects of your energy environment, as well as from the splintered aspects of your soul that need to interact in physical matter in order to be brought into wholeness. The personality does not operate independently from the soul. To the extent that a person is in touch with spiritual depths, the personality is soothed because the energy of consciousness is focused on its energy core and not on its artificial facade, which is the personality. The personality sometimes appears as a force running rampant in the world with no attachment to the energy of its soul. This situation can be the origin of what we call an evil human being, and it can be the origin of a schizophrenic human being. It is the result of the personality being unable to find its reference point, or connection, to its mothership, which is its soul. The conflicts of a human's life are directly proportional to the distance at which an energy of personality exists separately from the soul. And, therefore, as we shall see, in an irresponsible position of creation, when a personality is in full balance, you cannot see where it ends and the soul begins. That is a whole human being. What is involved in the healing of a soul? Most of us are accustomed to the idea that we are responsible for some of our actions, but not all of them. We consider ourselves responsible, for example, for the good deed that brings our neighbor and us together, or for responding to it positively, but we do not consider ourselves responsible for the argument between us and our neighbor, or for responding to it negatively. We consider ourselves responsible for having a safe trip if we take the time to check the condition of the car before starting. But if we speed around a car that, in our opinion, has been traveling too slowly, and almost cause an accident by doing that, we consider the other driver to be responsible. If we feed and clothe ourselves through our successful business, we credit ourselves. If we feed and clothe ourselves by burglarizing apartments, we blame our difficult childhood. For many of us, being held responsible is equal to getting caught. A friend who returns each year to his native Italy told me, with a twinkle in his eye, of a dinner out with his family. When the bill came, my friend's father, who is fastidious, examined each scribbled item. After some study, he deciphered the last entry and recognized it to be a short expression that translates, roughly, "If it goes, it goes." He called the waiter and asked, "What is this item?" The waiter shrugged. It didn't go. Many of us feel that if a clerk gives us too much change, and we take it, our life has been affected only to the extent that we have come into an unexpected gain. In fact, each of our acts affects us in far-reaching ways. Every action, thought, and feeling is motivated by an intention, and that intention is a cause that exists as one with an effect. If we participate in the cause, it is not possible for us not to participate in the effect. In this most profound way, we are held responsible for our every action, thought, and feeling, which is to say, for our every intention. We, ourselves, shall partake of the fruit of our every intention. It is, therefore, wise for us to become aware of the many intentions that inform our experience, to sort out which intentions produce which effects, and to choose our intentions according to the effects that we desire to produce. This is the way that we learned about physical reality as children, and that we refine our knowledge of it as adults. We learn the effect of crying when we are hungry, and we repeat the cause that brings us the effect that we desire. We learn the effect of putting a finger in a light socket, and we do not repeat the cause that produces that effect. We also learn about intentions and their effects through our experiences in physical reality. But learning that intentions produce specific effects, and what those effects are, proceeds slowly when our learning must be done solely through the density of physical matter. Anger, for example, causes distance and hostile interactions. If we must learn this solely through physical experience, we may have to experience 10 or 50 or 150 circumstances of distance from another and hostile interaction before we come to understand that it is the orientation of anger on our part, the intention of hostility and distance, and not this particular action or that, which produces the effect that we do not want. This is predominantly the way that a five-sensory human learns. The relationship of cause and effect within the domain of physical objects and phenomena reflects a dynamic that is not limited to physical reality. This is the dynamic of karma. Everything in the physical world, including each of us, is a small part of dynamics that are more extensive than a five-sensory human can perceive. The love, fear, compassion, and anger that you experience, for example, are only a small part of the love, fear, compassion, and anger of a larger energy system that you do not see. Within physical reality, the dynamic of karma is reflected by the third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In other words, the great law of karma that governs the balancing of energy within our evolutionary system is reflected within the domain of physical objects and phenomena by the last of three principles, 3 laws of motion that govern the balancing of energy within physical reality. The law of karma is an impersonal energy dynamic. When its effects are personalized, that is, experienced from the point of view of the personality, they are experienced as a reversal in the direction, a coming back to the intender of the energy of his or her intention. This is how the personality experiences the impersonal dynamic that is described by the third law as an equal and opposite reaction. The person who intends hatred for others experiences the intention of hatred from others. The person who intends love for others experiences the intention of love from others, and so forth. The Golden Rule is a behavioral guide that is based upon the dynamic of karma. A personalized statement of karma would be, you receive from the world what you give to the world. Karma is not a moral dynamic. Morality is a human creation. The universe does not judge. The law of karma governs the balancing of energy within our system of morality and within those of our neighbors. It serves humanity as an impersonal and universal teacher of responsibility. Every cause that has not yet produced its effect is an event that has not yet come to completion. It is an imbalance of energy that is in the process of becoming balanced. That balancing of energy does not always occur within the span of a single lifetime. The karma of your soul is created and balanced by the activities of its many personalities, including you. Often a personality experiences effects that were created by other of its soul's personalities, and, conversely, creates energy imbalances that are not able to right themselves within its own lifetime. Therefore, without knowledge of its soul, reincarnation, and karma, it is not always possible for a personality to understand the significance or the meaning of the events of its life, or to understand the effects of its responses to them. For example, a personality that takes advantage of others creates an imbalance of energy that must be righted by the experience of being taken advantage of by others. If that cannot be accomplished within the lifetime of this personality, another of its soul's personalities will experience being taken advantage of by other people. If that personality does not understand that the experience of being taken advantage of by others is the effect of a previous cause, and that this experience is bringing to completion an impersonal process, it will react from a personal point of view rather than from the point of view of its soul. It may become angry, for example, or vengeful or depressed. It may lash out, or grow cynical, or withdraw into sorrow. Each of these responses creates karma, another imbalance of energy which, in turn, must be balanced. In this way, one karmic debt has been paid, so to speak, but another, or others, has been created. If a child dies early in its life, we do not know what agreement was made between that child's soul and the souls of its parents, or what healing was served by that experience. Although we are sympathetic to the anguish of the parents, we cannot judge this event. If we, or the parents of this child, do not understand the impersonal nature of the dynamic that is in motion, we may react with anger towards the universe, or towards each other, or with guilt if we feel that our actions were inadequate. All of these reactions create karma, and more lessons for the soul to learn, more karmic debts for the soul to pay appear. In order to become whole, the soul must balance its energy. It must experience the effects that it has caused. The energy imbalances in the soul are the incomplete parts of the soul that form the personality. Personalities in interaction are souls that are seeking to heal. Whether an interaction between souls is healing or not depends upon whether the personality involved can see beyond itself and that of the other personality to the interaction of their souls. This perception automatically draws forth compassion. Every experience and every interaction provides you with an opportunity to look from the point of view of your soul or from the point of view of your personality. What does this mean in practical terms? How does a personality begin to look beyond itself and to see its soul in interaction with the souls of others? Since we cannot know what is being healed through each interaction, what karmic debts are coming to conclusion, cannot judge what we see. For example, when we see a person sleeping in the gutter in the winter, we do not know what is being completed for that soul. We do not know whether that soul has engaged in cruelty in another lifetime, and now has chosen to experience the same dynamic from an entirely different point of view, as, for example, the target of charity. It is appropriate that we respond to his or her circumstance with compassion, but it is not appropriate that we perceive it as unfair, because it is not. There are personalities that are selfish and hostile and negative, but even in these cases we cannot fully know the reasons why. These are hidden from view. That does not mean that we cannot recognize negativity when we see it, but we cannot judge it. That is not our place. If we intervene in an argument, or break up a fight, it is not appropriate that we judge the participants. Of one thing we can be certain: a person that is engaging in violence is hurting deeply, because a healthy and balanced soul is incapable of harming another. When we judge, we create negative karma. Judgment is a function of the personality. When we say of another soul, she is worthy, or he is not worthy, we create negative karma. When we say of an action, this is right, or that is wrong, we create negative karma. This does not mean that we should not act appropriately to the circumstances in which we find ourselves. If our car is hit by another car, for example, and the driver of the other car is not drunk, it is appropriate that the other driver be held responsible through the courts for the repair of our car. It is appropriate that he or she be prohibited from driving while intoxicated. It is not appropriate that we allow our actions to be motivated by feelings of indignation, righteousness, or victimization. These feelings are the result of judgments that we make about ourselves and the other person, assessments through which we see ourselves as superior to another being. If we act upon these feelings, not only do we increase the karmic obligations of our soul, but we also are not able to enter into these feelings and learn from them. Feelings, as we shall see, are the means through which we can discern the parts of itself that the soul seeks to heal, and through which we come to see the action of the soul in physical matter. The road to your soul is through your heart. If we are to engage the viewpoint of the soul, we must cease from judging. Even those events that appear to be unfathomable, such as the cruelty of an inquisition or a holocaust, the death of an infant, the prolonged agony of a death by cancer, or a life confined to a bed. We do not know what is being healed in these sufferings, or the details of the energetic circumstance that is coming into balance. It is appropriate that we allow ourselves to feel the compassion that such circumstances call forth in us and to act upon it. But if we allow ourselves to judge these events and those who participate in them, we create negative karma that must be balanced, and we ourselves will be among those souls that choose to participate in circumstances that are necessary to that balancing. If we do not judge, how can there be justice? Gandhi was beaten several times during his life. Although on 2 occasions he nearly died, he refused to prosecute his attackers because he saw that they were doing what they thought was right. this position of non-judgmental acceptance was central in Gandhi's life. The Christ did not judge even those who spit in his face, and who subjected him without mercy to his pain and humiliation. He asked forgiveness, not vengeance, for those who tortured him. Did neither the Christ nor Gandhi know the meaning of justice? They knew non-judgmental justice. What is non-judgmental justice? Non-judgmental justice is a perception that allows you to see everything in life, but does not engage your negative emotions. Non-judgmental justice relieves you of the self-appointed job of judge and jury because you know that everything is being seen, nothing escapes the law of karma, and this brings forth understanding and compassion. Non-judgmental justice is the freedom of seeing what you see and experiencing what you experience without responding negatively. It allows you to experience directly the unobstructed flow of the intelligence, radiance and love of the universe of which our physical reality is a part. Non-judgmental justice flows naturally from understanding the soul and how it evolves. This, then, is the framework of our evolutionary process, the continual incarnation and reincarnation of the energy of the soul into physical reality for the purposes of healing and balancing its energy in accordance with the law of karma. Within this framework we evolve as individuals and as a species, through the cycle of being unempowered to becoming empowered. Yet the experiences that we encounter in this process need not be the kind that we have encountered to now. Chapter 3. Reverence. The framework of karma and reincarnation in which we evolve is neutral. Actions and reactions in the physical arena set energy into motion, forming our experiences and revealing in the process the lessons that the soul has yet to learn. When our actions create discord in another person, we, ourselves, in this lifetime or in another, will feel that discord. Likewise, if our actions create harmony and empowerment in another, we also will come to feel that harmony and empowerment. This allows us to experience the effects of what we have created, and thereby to learn to create responsibly. The framework of karma and reincarnation is impersonal, and provides for each soul, in response to the actions of its personalities, the experiences that it requires in order to evolve. Therefore, the orientation, or the attitude, with which a personality approaches the evolutionary process determines the nature of the experiences that will be required for the evolution of its soul. An angry personality, for example, will respond to the difficulties of its life with anger, and thereby bring into being the necessity of experiencing the results of anger. A sorrowful personality will respond sorrowfully, and bring into being the necessity of experiencing the results of sorrow, and so on. A person who is angry, and yet reveres life, however, will respond very differently to the difficulties of his or her life than a person who is angry and has no reverence for life. The person who has no reverence for life will not hesitate to strike out against life. The violence that is released in killing another person or another living creature is much greater than the violence that is released in speaking angry words. The karmic obligation, the energy imbalance that is created by killing, can be balanced only by the experience of a commensurate brutality. Thus, a person who is reverent will automatically be spared the severe karmic consequences of one who is not. Even if all of our species were reverent, that would end the need for us to move through our own evolution. It would just change the quality of the learning within the process of evolution. In other words, if we became reverent this day, we would not be exempt from the demands of our evolution, but the quality of the experiences that we would encounter would be different. We would not harm life. We would still learn the same thing, but in the process of learning, we would not seek to harm or to destroy. Our journey from powerlessness to authentic empowerment would continue, but the nature of that experience would change. We would not encounter the types of experiences that result from a perception of the world that lacks reverence. We see life as cheap. This perception pervades all of our perceptions. When we look at the animal kingdom, for example, we see the activities within this kingdom as verification of our evaluation of life. We see animals kill and feed upon other animals, and we conclude that weaker forms of life exist only to nourish the stronger. We justify our exploitation of life upon what we perceive to be the design of nature. We maim and kill. We create situations in which millions of people starve while we store grain in silos and pour milk down drains. We look upon each other as prey to satisfy our emotional and physical needs. We say, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and that to survive in it we must take advantage of others before they take advantage of us. We look upon life as a contest that produces winners and losers, and we feel no restraints upon us when the needs of other people or other groups threaten us. Our behavior and values are so much shaped by perceptions that lack reverence that we do not know what it is like to be reverent. When we curse a reverence, competitor or strive to disempower another person, we absent ourselves from when we work to take instead of to give. We labor without reverence. When we strive for safety at the expense of another person's safety, we deprive ourselves of the protection of reverence. When we judge one person as superior and another as inferior, we depart from reverence. When we judge ourselves, we do the same thing. Business, politics, education, sex, raising families and personal interactions without reverence all produce the same result. Human beings using other human beings. Our species has become arrogant. We behave as though the earth were ours to do with as we please. We pollute its land, oceans and atmosphere to satisfy our needs without thinking of the needs of the other life forms that live upon the earth, or of the needs of the earth. We believe that we are conscious and that the universe is not. We think and act as though our existence as living forces in the universe will end with this lifetime, and that we are responsible neither to others nor to the universe. It is not possible for a reverent person to exploit his or her friends, co-workers, city, nation, or planet. It is not possible for a reverent species to create caste systems, child labor, nerve gas, or nuclear weapons. Therefore, it is not possible for a reverent person, or a reverent species, to accumulate the type of karma that such activities create. Why is this? What is reverence? Reverence is engaging in a form and a depth of contact with life that is well beyond the shell of form and into essence. Reverence is contact with the essence of each thing and person and plant and bird and animal. It is contact with the interior of its beingness. Even if you cannot sense the interior, it is enough to know that the form, the shell, is merely an outer layer, and that underneath it, the true power and essence of who a person is, or what a thing is present. That is what is honored in reverence. Process is honored in reverence. The unfolding of life, the maturation process, the process of growing through and coming into your own empowerment, is a process that needs to be approached with reverence. The cycles of life need to be approached with reverence. They have been in place for billions of years. They are the reflection of the natural breathing of the soul of Gala itself, the earth consciousness, as it moves its force fields and guides the cycles of life. If these are revered, how could we look at something as exquisite as our Earth's ecology and do one thing that would risk the balance of this system? Reverence is an attitude of honoring life. You do not have to be authentically empowered to be gentle with life or to love life. There are many people who are not authentically empowered but who are quite reverent. They would harm nothing. Often it is the case that they are the most compassionate and the most loving people because they have suffered so much. Whether a person is reverent depends essentially upon whether he or she accepts the principle of the sacredness of life, any way that he or she defines sacred. Reverence is also simply the experience of accepting that all life is, in and of itself, of value. Reverence is not respect. Respect is a judgment. It is a response to the perception of qualities that we ourselves admire, or have been taught to admire. Qualities that are admired by the people of one culture may not be admired by the people of another culture, or by the people of a subculture, or by another generation of the same culture. Therefore, what is respected by some people may not be respected by others. It is possible to respect one person and not respect another, but it is not possible to revere one person without revering every person. Reverence is a perception, but it is a holy perception. The perception of holiness is not one that we use continually. It is one that we apply to religion, but not to the process of evolution or the learning process of the human life. And so we do not approach the need to learn and all of the learning experiences of our lives, with regard for their purpose, against the background of spiritual development. Perceiving in this way is true reverence, because it allows you to look at what you are going through, and to see it within the framework of the evolution and the maturation of your own spirit. It is true reverence, because it enables you to look at all the evolutions that are taking place simultaneously with your own, in all of the kingdoms of life, and fully appreciate, or at least see very differently, how they unfold. Only when we see through eyes that lack reverence, for example, does the feeding of one animal upon another appear to be a cruel system, instead of one where species learn to give to each other, where there is a natural give and take and sharing of the energies between kingdoms. This is ecology, the natural redistribution of energy between kingdoms. It is only our kingdom, the human kingdom, that wants to warehouse energy, to use much more than it needs, and to store what it does not, so that the balance of the cycle is disturbed so dramatically. If each of us took only what he or she needed for that day, it would be perfect. Animals do not warehouse like us, except in the case of animals that need to for winter. The perception of reverence allows us to see the interdependency of different species from a more comprehensive and compassionate perspective. It allows us to see the significance of each living creature, and its experiences, to the compassionate unfolding of the universe. This perspective is much less likely to create violent or destructive responses within us as we grow through our lives, because it reveals in each moment the value of all life. Approaching and regarding life with an attitude of reverence permits the experience of being unempowered but not cruel. As you work toward becoming reverent, your tendencies toward harming others and other forms of life diminish. As you acquire a sense of reverence, you develop a capacity to think more deeply about the value of life before you commit your energy to action. When you are fully reverent, you cannot harm life, even though you are Without reverence, the experience of being unempowered can become a very cruel one, because a disempowered person is a frightened person, and if a frightened person has no sense of reverence, He or she will harm or kill indiscriminately. Reverence is a level of protection and honor about the process of life, so that while a person is maturing toward the journey and through the journey of authentic empowerment, he or she harms nothing. Because we have no reverence, our journey to empowerment often includes the experiences of victimizing life. Therefore, there are victims and victimizers. The process of destroying life while we are learning about life that has characterized our evolution would cease, or at least would be very different, if we approached life with a quality of reverence. It is because we have no sense of reverence, no true belief in the holiness of all life, that life is destroyed and tortured, brutalized, starved and maimed while we journey from unempowerment to empowerment. If a sense of reverence were brought into the process of evolution, then, as each of us, and our species, moves through the cycle of being unempowered to becoming empowered, the many learnings that are contained within that growing process of evolution would not likely produce violence and fear, to the extent that it is now experienced. The destructions of human life, plant life, animal life, and the planet would be considerably diminished, or would cease, if there were an active principle of reverence within our species, if there were the perception within our species, and within each of us, that although we are engaged in evolutionary processes that require personal learning, that does not authorize us to destroy life while we are learning, or because we would not have the karmic energy of destruction, only of learning. Even though learning is contained in destruction, the karmic consequences of participating in violence and destruction are a high price to pay for it. It is not necessary, in other words, to learn what we need to learn and have it cost somebody his or her life. It is not necessary for progress and the experience of progress to cost the destruction of nature. It is not necessary, but without a sense of reverence for life, who cares that it destroys life? Without reverence, life becomes a very cheap commodity, as it is upon our planet now, where the entire process and the sacredness of evolution is not regarded, accepted, or honored. If we perceived life with reverence, and understood our evolutionary process, we would stand in awe at the experience of physical life and walk the earth in a very deep sense of gratitude. As it is, there are billions of human beings who are filled with regret that they are on the earth, with overwhelming experiences of pain, despair, discouragement, depression, starvation, and disease. These are the things of our planet. They result largely from the fact that so much of the human condition is without reverence. Reverence is a perception of the soul. Only the personality can perceive life without reverence. Reverence is a natural aspect of authentic empowerment because the soul reveres all of life. Therefore, when the personality is aligned with the soul, it cannot perceive life except with reverence. Approaching life with reverence not only protects the soul from the karmic obligations that are created by personalities that do not honor life, but it also is a step toward moving the personality into alignment with the soul, because it brings an aspect of the soul directly into the physical environment. What does the decision to approach life with reverence mean in practical terms? It means challenging the perceptions and the values of a five-sensory world that lacks reverence. This is not always easy, especially for males who have been taught values that serve the accumulation of external power. An authentically empowered male will not be embarrassed or feel less than fully masculine by showing concern for life, and for the many creatures on our planet. That is very much the energy of reverence. Therefore, the decision to approach life with reverence often requires courage, not only of men, but also of women who have adopted these values. The decision to become a reverent person is essentially the decision to become a spiritual person. There is currently no place for spirituality within science, politics, business, or academia. To a five-sensory personality that lacks reverence, a reverent businessman or businesswoman appears to be competing at a disadvantage, because the range of his or her activities is not unlimited, and a reverent politician appears to be unqualified for leadership in a world where the only power that is recognized is external power. Yet, to the multisensory human, a reverent businessman or businesswoman is a person who infuses a new energy into the archetype of entrepreneur, shifting it from a dynamic that is motivated by profits that are generated by serving others to a dynamic of serving others that is made possible by profits. And a reverent politician is a person who challenges the concept of external power and brings to the political arena the concerns of the heart. Therefore, the decision to approach life with reverence means acting and thinking as a spiritual person in a world that does not recognize spirit. And it means moving consciously toward the perceptions of the multisensory human. To live with reverence means being willing to say, that is life. We must not harm it, and those are our fellow humans. We must not destroy them, and mean it. It means re-examining the way that we treat the members of the animal kingdom that serve us so patiently. It means recognizing the rights of the earth. That the earth has rights is a concept that is not even present in our species yet. An attitude of reverence is the atmosphere, the environment in which the multisensory personality evolves. It is a sense of richness and fullness and intimacy of being. It creates compassion and acts of kindness. Without reverence, without the perception of the holiness of all things, the world becomes cold and barren, mechanical and random at the same time, and this creates experiences of alienation and acts of violence. It is not natural for us to live without reverence, because that separates us from the basic energy of the soul. Reverence automatically brings forth patience. Impatience is the desire to have your needs met first. When your needs are taken care of, do you not then have patience with the needs of others? A reverent person honors life in all its forms and all its activities. It does not think in the terms that are required to produce impatience. Reverence permits non-judgmental justice. The soul does not judge, and so the personality chooses to bring into physical reality another of its soul's characteristics when it chooses to approach life with reverence. The reverent person cannot consider himself or herself superior to another person or to any other form of life, because the reverent person sees divinity in all forms of life and honors it. An attitude of reverence facilitates the transition from the logic and understanding of the five-sensory human to the higher order of logic and understanding of the multisensory human, because, as we shall see, this higher order of logic and understanding originates in the heart. Without reverence, our experiences are brutal and destructive. With reverence, our experiences become compassionate and caring. We shall come to honor all of life, sooner or later. Our choices are when that shall happen, and the quality of experience that we shall have as we learn. Chapter 4. Heart. The logics that have served our five-sensory exploration of physical reality cannot comprehend evolution without time or the influence of the present upon the past. They cannot meaningfully represent the existence of the soul, or a dynamic of energy balancing that generates and links many lifetimes. They reflect no experiential points of reference beyond those of the five-sensory personality. Therefore, the time has come for a higher order of logic and understanding. The logics and understandings of the five-sensory personality originate in the mind. They are products of the intellect. The higher order of logic and understanding that is capable of meaningfully reflecting the soul comes from the heart. The creation of this higher order of logic and understanding, therefore, requires close attention to feelings. The central position of the heart in the higher order of logic and understanding of the multisensory human, and the sensitivity to emotional currents that is characteristic of multisensory humans, appear as extraneous to the five-sensory personality because they do not serve the accumulation of external power. As we have come to seek and wield external power consciously, we have come to view feelings as unnecessary appendages, like tonsils useless, but capable of creating pain and dysfunction. Thus, the pursuit of external power has led to a repression of emotion. This is true of us as individuals and as a species. The irrelevancy that we attribute to feelings pervades our thinking and our values. We admire the hard-nosed businessman who fires employees for the sake of external power. We reward the military officer who sends himself or others to pain and death for the sake of external power. We honor the statesman who is not swayed by compassion. When we close the door to our feelings, we close the door to the vital currents that energize and activate our thoughts and actions. We cannot begin the process of understanding the effects of our emotions upon us, our environment, and other people, or the effects of the emotions of other people upon themselves, their environment, and us. Without an awareness of our emotions, we cannot associate the effects of anger, sadness, grief, and joy within ourselves or others with their causes. We cannot distinguish between that part of us which is personality and that part of us which is soul. Without an awareness of our feelings, we cannot experience compassion. How can we share the sufferings and the joys of others if we cannot experience our own? If we are not intimate with our emotions, we cannot perceive the dynamics that lie behind emotions, the way that these dynamics work, and the ends that they serve. Emotions are currents of energy that pass through us. Awareness of these currents is the first step in learning how our experiences come into being and why. Emotions reflect intentions. Therefore, awareness of emotions leads to awareness of intentions. Every discrepancy between a conscious intention and the emotions that accompany it points directly to a splintered aspect of these LF that requires healing. If, for example, your intention to marry causes pain instead of joy, following the pain will lead you to unconscious intentions. If your intention to advance in your work causes sorrow instead of satisfaction, following the sorrow will lead you to unconscious intentions. Without an awareness of your emotions, you are not able to experience reverence. Reverence is not an emotion. It is a way of being, but the path to reverence is through your heart, and only an awareness of your feelings can open your heart. The higher order of logic and understanding of the multisensory personality reveals connections where no connections are apparent to the five-sensory personality, and meaning where no meaning is apparent to the five-sensory personality. A five-sensory personality is not able to process fully the data of its senses. Its perception of reality is segmented. Its experience of the universe is partitioned. The five-sensory personality can learn that internal dynamics affect perception and formulate this as folklore or cliché, such as, "Smile and the world smiles with you." It can discover regularities within physical reality and formulate them as laws, such as, A body in uniform motion will remain in uniform motion until it is acted upon by a force. Yet, the five-sensory personality is not able to experience the relationships between these domains, and, therefore, is not able to learn about one from the other. It is not able to experience the same richness through each. Science, for example, reflects the divine impulse to become conscious of relationships that connect apparently separate aspects of experience. It is the pinnacle achievement of the five-sensory personality, yet when the fruits of science are grasped only with the logic and understanding of the five-sensory human, internal dynamics, feelings and intentions appear to be unrelated to the world of matter. Neither supernovas, nor subatomic decay rates, nor anything in between, appear to be affected by what human beings feel or think. When the discoveries of science are comprehended with the logic and understanding of the multisensory human, intimate relationships appear between internal dynamics and regularities that govern physical phenomena. To the multisensory human, for example, a body in uniform motion will remain in uniform motion until it is acted upon by a force, reflects not only a dynamic at work within the realm of time and space and matter, but also a deeper dynamic that works within non-physical reality as well. How is this? One of my friends in infantry officer candidate school was a tall, affable, and pleasant-looking young man from Kentucky named Hank. Hank and I liked each other early on. Several times he lent me his physical strength when my load became too heavy, and I helped him through intellectual obstacles, such as calculating artillery trajectories. We shared adventures, and our friendship grew. Upon graduation, we were assigned to different organizations. I lost track of Hank until I ran into him in Saigon. He had been wounded, and due to the befriending of an army general, had been assigned to a unit that I came frequently to visit. While serving in Saigon, he met a popular female radio announcer, and they became engaged. It seemed a perfect match, a tall, handsome captain, and a beautiful and admired public figure. I again lost track of Hank until I had left the army. He called me to say that his wife was coming to make an appearance at a resort near me, and he asked me to meet him there. When I met Hank, now a civilian also, he looked troubled, and his easygoing manner was dampened. He had changed his name to Hal, he told me, and apologized that his wife was unable to join us. We spoke for a while, and when I asked him what he was doing with himself, he told me, looking for my place in the sun. The next news that I heard of Hank Howe was that he had killed himself. When I was later able to meet his widow, she told me a painful story of marital difficulties, of Hank's despondency, and of his suicide. In the years immediately following the Vietnam War, the rate of suicides among Vietnam veterans was significantly higher than the rate of suicides among non-veterans. Therefore, it is likely that Hank, also, was affected adversely by his experiences in Vietnam. Yet there was also a more common dynamic at work in my friend. Hank was not the kind of person to ask himself deeper questions about his life. He did not inquire into the deeper meaning of his existence upon the earth, because that would have caused him to change his life, and he did not want to do that. He lived his life without much reflection, and one day he awoke to overwhelming emptiness and powerlessness. How does my friend's life relate to the first law of motion? A body in uniform motion will remain in uniform motion until it is acted upon by a force. What does uniform motion mean in terms of a human life? And what is the force that alters that motion? The outward events of Hank's life were not uniform. He grew up on a farm in Kentucky, became a military officer, traveled thousands of miles from his home, married a celebrity, and brought his own life to an end. It was the unconscious quality of the flow of Hank's life that was uniform in its motion. Neither the experiences of his childhood, nor his military service, nor his marriage, caused Hank to consider seriously the deeper meaning of his existence. The pains and the joys that flowed through him did not affect his awareness of who he was, or what he might become. Hank did not allow himself to follow the experiences of his life to their roots. On the contrary, he feared such a pursuit. As a result, his life flowed uniformly unaware, uniformly unconscious, from its incarnation to its release. He experienced the situations that were necessary to the balancing of the energy of his soul. He responded to them in accordance with the conditioning that he had acquired through the karma of his soul and the environment into which he was born, and he created more karma unconsciously with each response. The compassion that Hank brought into the world nurtured many people around him, including me, but he did not allow it to become his center of gravity. Hank made no effort to move toward his soul. He spent his life attempting to fulfill the wants of his personality, and he became too attached to those wants to attempt to change them. Thus, Hank's life was a body in uniform motion that never encountered a force. What is the force that Hank's life did not encounter? Gregory was a white, middle-class and college-educated man from the Northeast. His childhood was emotionally difficult, and he grew up angry, manipulative, and bitter. He was incapable of forming relationships, and his violent temper and argumentative nature kept people at a distance. This further increased Gregory's disdain for life and for other people, but he did not stop to ask what role he played in his experiences. When, at last, his temper and his disagreeable disposition caused the woman that he was living with to leave, Gregory fell into a deep anguish, not only because of his loss, but also because he recognized in this latest event the repetition of a long-standing pattern in which he found himself, in each instance, suffering from rejection. He determined to confront both his pain and his pattern. He made arrangements to live in solitude while he searched within himself for the deepest causes of his painful life. When he emerged, weeks later, both his perceptions and his values had changed. He began to soften, and, slowly, his old mannerisms dropped away. Over the following years, he developed a more sensitive way of being with people. His cynicism gave way to an emerging joy, his anger melted, and other people became central to his life. He is a productive person now, and he draws his strength from the contributions that he makes to his fellows. These changes did not come easily to Gregory. His transition from an angry, manipulative, disdainful person to a more caring and considerate person was a journey through pain that required much courage. Yet, by committing himself to that journey, he changed his life. From the point of view of Gregory's consciousness, the uniform flow of Gregory's life was altered significantly by his determination to confront his pain, and was altered further by his determination to cultivate his new perceptions. The force that altered the uniform motion of Gregory's life was his decision to enter into his life consciously. Without this decision, Gregory's life would have continued, as did Hank's, on the unconscious course that his karma, and his responses to the situations that it generated, would have created for him. Is it appropriate to interpret the first law of motion, which depicts the idealized movement of a physical object, in this way? Is the first law of motion, when it is interpreted in this way, merely a metaphor that conveniently serves to describe a non-physical dynamic? it is more than that. It is the reflection in physical reality, in the world of physical objects and phenomena, of a larger, non-physical dynamic at work in non-physical domains. This is the physics of the soul. When science and its discoveries are understood with the higher order of logic and understanding of the multisensory human, they reveal the same richness that life itself displays everywhere and endlessly. The perception of the multisensory personality is not segmented. The multisensory human, for example, sees that the paradigms which form the history of science also reveal a history of the way that our species has seen itself in relation to the universe. Ptolemaic astronomy reflects a species that sees itself as the center of the universe. Copernican astronomy reflects a more sophisticated and interdependent perspective of a species that recognizes itself as part of the motion of the universe. Newtonian physics reflects a species that is confident in its ability to grasp the dynamics of the physical world through the intellect. Relativity reflects a species that understands the limiting relationship between the absolute and personalized perceptions of it. And quantum physics reflects a species that is becoming aware of the relationship of its consciousness to the physical world. In other words, from the point of view of the multisensory human, the discoveries of science illuminate both inner and outer experiences, physical and non-physical dynamics. A foundational discovery of optics, for example, is that white and black are not colors, like blue, green, and red. White is a combination of all the colors of the visible spectrum of light, and black is the absence of that. Speck with purity, insight, and divine inspiration. As we shall see, this type of light is not merely poetical, it is real. A soul can find it difficult to walk the way of light through the course of an incarnation. It can find that learning to live in light is a difficult sojourn, through the choices that it makes while it is incarnate upon the earth. The choice of anger instead of forgiveness, for example, or condemnation instead of understanding a soul, accumulates negative karma. As it leaves its body, it remains enveloped with the quality of light that it acquired through the choices that it made while it was upon the earth. When that soul has to create another personality, it will have to create a personality that is drawn from this well. Therefore, it will create a personality of more limitations. A personality with limitations of consciousness will find what we call evil more attractive than will one with a more expanded awareness. The temptation to walk that way will be strong for such a personality. All souls are tempted, but an individual with limitations of consciousness will find it more attractive too. Walk into the magnetic field of fear because it would not recognize fear for what it is. It would accept it as something else, as something that is normal to life. How we understand evil, therefore, is very significant. Evil needs to be understood for what it is. The dynamic of the absence of light. It is not something that one should prepare to battle, to run from, or to outlaw. Understanding evil as the absence of light automatically requires that we reach for this thing called light. Conscious light is equal to divinity, to divine intelligence. Where there is an absence of divine intelligence, that darkness itself maneuvers. It is simply that there is darkness, and we stumble in the darkness. The existence in darkness is not permanent. Every soul will eventually be fully enlightened. A soul with no light will always come to no light because there is so much assistance provided to each soul at all times. There is much light, as we shall see, that is continually surrounding such a soul, even though it may not be able to directly penetrate it. and there is much assistance for souls that insist upon living in darkness. The encouragement to take even one thought into light is always available. Eventually, they always do. Understanding that evil is the absence of light does not mean that it is inappropriate to respond to evil. What is the appropriate response to evil? The remedy for an absence is a presence. Evil is an absence and, therefore, it cannot be healed with an absence. By hating evil, or one who is engaged in evil, you contribute to the absence of light and not to its presence. Hatred of evil does not diminish evil, it increases it. The absence of light causes the personality to suffer. There is pain. When you hate, you bring that suffering upon yourself. Hatred of evil affects the one who hates. It makes him or her a hateful person. A person who also has absented himself or herself from light. Understanding evil as the absence of light does not require you to become passive or to disregard evil actions or evil behavior. If you see a child being abused or a people being oppressed, for example, it is appropriate that you do what you can to protect the child or to aid the people. But if there is not compassion in your heart also for those who abuse and oppress, for those who have no compassion, do you not become like them? Compassion is being moved to and by acts of the heart, to and by the energy of love. If you strike without compassion against the darkness, you yourself enter the darkness. Understanding that evil is the absence of light challenges the perception of power as external. Can an absence be defeated? An evil person can be arrested, but can evil be arrested? An evil group can be imprisoned, but can evil be imprisoned? A compassionate heart is more effective against evil than an army. An army can engage another army, but it cannot engage evil. A compassionate heart can engage evil directly. It can bring light where there was no light. Understanding evil as the absence of light requires you to examine the choices that you make each moment in terms of whether they move you toward light or away from it. It allows you to look with compassion upon those who engage in evil activities, even as you challenge their activities, and thus protects you from the creation of negative karma. It permits you to see that the place to begin the task of eliminating evil is within yourself. This is the appropriate response to evil. The higher order of logic and understanding that characterizes the multisensory human permits it to learn more quickly than the five-sensory human is able to learn from what its senses alone tell it, and what its intellect makes of that. We have evolved as far as the intellect will take us. We have explored the scope and depth of five-sensory reality, and we have discovered the limitations of external power. The next phase of our evolution will take us into the experiences of the multisensory human and the nature of authentic power. This requires the heart.